Heavy gaming.
Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, Koei, Capcom. These companies are video game industry giants that have a number of development studios pumping out games and content for them every year. You're guaranteed a FIFA title, an Assassin's Creed title, an over-the-top hack and slash game, or a Resident Evil. The games these companies publish or develop can be either unbelievably good, nothing special, or somewhere in between. And we have come to expect this nowadays. Then there are those companies that either don't have that many games on their CV, or do have a lot of games but release them in such large gaps that they're marvels to behold once they're out there for the public to play. Developers that aim for quality over quantity, as it were. Developer Naughty Dog, who are famously known for creating the Crash Bandicoot and Uncharted series, always take their time creating their games, and once they are out, they are magnificently polished. You have CD Projekt Red, who have thus far only created the Witcher franchise, arguably one of the best Western RPGs ever created. There's also Guerrilla Games, which have only made one franchise and two individual titles, those games being the Killzone franchise, Shellshock Nam 67 and Horizon Zero Dawn respectively. These kind of developers are the ones to keep an eye out for, because it doesn't matter if you're not a fan of their games, you cannot deny the impact they have on release. Where am I going with this, I hear you ask? Well, there is another company called PLAYDEAD, which was founded in 2006 by Arndt Jensen, former developer at IO Interactive, the team behind the Hitman series. So what is so special about PLAYDEAD? Well, as of this video, they've only existed for over a decade, made 2 games, and are currently on their 3rd unnamed project. And so far, the 2 games they have created have been short but sweet little masterpieces. The 2 games they have made thus far are Limbo, created in 2010, and Inside, created in 2016. As you may or may not know by now, I am a massive fan of the cinematic platformer, particularly Flashback, Another World, Heart of Darkness and Abe's Odyssey, and over the years these genres have evolved somewhat. At the time, these games would all have something in common. Each level would feature multiple levels of altitude spanned by non-scrolling stationary environments. Nowadays, I tend to see games like Limbo and Inside as the modern incarnation of the cinematic platformer, as they maintain the realistic movements, natural physics, and of course, the trial and error mechanics inputted into their respective puzzles. These are staples of the cinematic platformer, and you can thank the original Prince of Persia for practically inventing the genre. They are one of my favourite kind of games, and once I saw Limbo for the first time, I didn't even hesitate and just bought it, and the same goes for Inside. So instead of reviewing one of these games separately, I'm going to take advantage of their relatively short length and review both of them back to back. Before I continue, I want to play it safe and let you know of any potential spoilers in these games, so if you haven't played these games and don't want anything spoiled or your experience dulled, maybe best to check out a spoiler-free review if there is one, but I will try my best to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. If I do come into spoiler territory, I'll let you know. So let's kick this review off with me taking a look at PLAYDEAD's first game, Limbo. Limbo was originally published by Microsoft Game Studios exclusively for the Xbox 360 as part of the system's Summer of Arcade promotion, and was released alongside many other games during this time, including Castlevania Harmony of Despair, Hydro Thunder Hurricane, Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, and Monday Night Combat. Out of all of these games, Limbo was the one that stood out to me, and I instantly purchased it without thinking. After the exclusivity deal was lifted in 2011, it was eventually released on pretty much everything else except a Nintendo platform. It was even re-released on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. The developer said he wanted as many people to play his games as possible. It was also released on iOS platform along with Inside. Trivia time. Did you know that the title of the game was taken from the Latin word limbus, meaning edge? At the beginning of the game, the main character you play as wakes up in the middle of a forest on the edge of hell, which ends up making sense of this title. Very clever, I like it. Moving on. You control a young boy in search for his missing sister, and your objective is to traverse the game's environment from left to right, jumping on ledges and avoiding traps and obstacles that become more sinister along the way. Speaking of sinister, this game is pretty violent and at times a bit grotesque and uneasy. It doesn't take long for the game to let you know either. In my review of Heart of Darkness, I spoke of how crazy violent the deaths were in that game, and to be honest, I don't think it compares to the kind of deaths that you see in Limbo. While Heart of Darkness had an over-the-top cartoonish nature in how you got killed, Limbo is much more uncomfortable. For example, getting caught in a bear trap can decapitate you. Decapitate as in, yes, your head comes clean off. It's disturbing. This game has a very eerie and depressing atmosphere about it, and I think it has to be up there as one of the most artistic video games ever made in the past 20 years. It's moody, violent, and very uncomfortable to look at sometimes. Limbo is loaded with various puzzles that you will have to solve in order to progress, and most of them are not that simple. In fact, I can remember sitting there for a good 10 to 15 minutes being stuck on one of these puzzles, but once I eventually figured it out, I felt so proud of myself, like it was a proper epiphany. In fact, this game has to have one of the most satisfying puzzle solving elements in the game, proper eureka moments that I'm not going to completely give away in this review, but they are very well done. And it's not just the puzzles you will come across. In some cases you will come into contact with different traps, and there are many ways that the game will trick you. The developers have dubbed Limbo as a trial and death game, and deservingly so, I believe, and you will die a lot. So much so that one of the achievements you can earn in this game is for beating the game with fewer than 5 deaths in one sitting. I have beaten Limbo twice, on both the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, and in both times I have never been able to get that achievement, and I don't think I ever will either. My attention span just doesn't quite cut it these days with the ridiculous backlog that I have, but back to the game anyway. In terms of visuals, well, there isn't much to say. I mean, look at it. It is so simple, yet unbelievable to look at. The game is entirely in monochrome, and every character, creature and platform that you come across is a silhouette. It has to be one of the most genuine art styles I have ever seen, and ever since Limbo came out I have seen many games trying to emulate this style. That is how much ground that this game broke. The sound design is also simply brilliant as well, and they play a fairly important part in the game too. In some cases you're going to have to listen for particular audio cues in order to solve a puzzle. If you ever plan on picking up Limbo, play it with headphones on. It's the best way to experience this game from an audio standpoint at least. The soundtrack takes the form of nothing but creepy ambience, and it really fits the style and tone of the game. I really enjoyed listening to this game as well as looking at it. All in all, Limbo is an absolutely amazing accomplishment by PLAYDEAD, especially for their first IP. It is definitely up there as one of my favourite puzzle platformers of all time, and I highly suggest you pick it up if you haven't already. And now it's time to move over to PLAYDEAD's next game, and what is quite obviously a spiritual successor to Limbo, and it is simply entitled Inside. Inside was released in 2016 for the Xbox One, Windows PC and PS4, and eventually on iOS devices on the 15th of December 2017, with a Nintendo Switch version also in the works as of writing up this review. It follows another unnamed boy as he makes his way to an unknown facility. A lot of the physics and gameplay elements are very similar to that of Limbo, and there was also a new mechanic added into the game that I will touch upon in just a minute or two, but let me quickly get into how the game looks. Inside has a much more detailed looking environment in contrast to Limbo. While there are still a lot of grey and desaturated areas, there is more colour in this game, but still maintains its minimalistic approach to the amount of colours you see. And the camera is also very clever in that it zooms out and in and rotates depending on the situation you're in, and I always found it helpful whenever I felt like I didn't know where to go next. With that said, it's clear to see that this game has much more of a 3D atmosphere than what Limbo was, but the gameplay remains the same, that being 2D movement. Essentially, this is a 2.5D platformer. As I played through this game, I was very confused by what was going on, and that's not a bad thing. Let me explain. The plot of this game is such a mystery in its first hour or two that you will often question why there are guard dogs that kill on sight, why people are looking for you, why you have to hide whenever you see a car nearby, why all of this uncertainty. That's what makes Inside's story unique, and as well as Limbo, there is no dialogue. The game's story unfolds in the background as you push forward, and by the time I got to the ending, I was left shocked and astounded. I am not going to spoil anything on that part. At some point in the game, you will have to solve puzzles by mind controlling other NPCs that will mimic your every move. I eventually played the game The Swapper about a year after playing this, and I was able to make a few comparisons to both of these games as they both share similar puzzles and mechanics like this. But sadly, the overall puzzles in Inside were not as difficult as the ones in Limbo. I did enjoy solving them, but I thought that the puzzle solving in Limbo felt much more gratifying. I'm not saying that the puzzles in Inside are terrible, I am not going to take that away from the game, I just wish they could have been a little bit more challenging, and I wish I could have been tested a lot more. Later in the game, I also came across this weird looking creature or girl or siren. I don't know what it was, but she creeped the ever-living hell out of me, and trying to avoid her felt very intense. Once I beat the game, I didn't quite understand it. I'm not going to mention any details about it, but there are many theories all over the internet that speculate the meaning of the ending, and I found all of it very interesting. The music, or ambience, was very similar to that of Limbo and was created by the same artist, and as such I loved hearing all of it. Both Limbo and Inside had collectibles for the player to find, and on both games I didn't find them that difficult, especially on Inside, so much so that I got all of the achievements on the Xbox version, as most if not all of the achievements are tied to picking up those collectibles. Both of these games were an absolute joy to play, but if I had to pick one, I would say Limbo would be my preferred game over Inside. That is not to say that Inside is bad, far from it. They are both magnificent, and breaking both games down, all I can really have in favour of Limbo is its puzzles were more satisfying. PLAYDEAD really knocked it out of the park with both of these games, and I am very much looking forward to what they come up with in their third IP. If you have not played either Limbo or Inside, then you can get them both in the one package for a very affordable price, and playing them back to back is something I highly recommend doing to get the most out of them. And speaking of back to back, that just about does it for this double bill review of Limbo and Inside. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then the subscribe button is there if you want to give it a click. If not, then no pressure. I do these videos because I really enjoy it. This has been Gamerboy talking to you on GB Gaming, where video games come first. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. And I'm out.